Imagine a place where luxury shines brighter than the scorching desert sun, where towering skyscrapers rose from nothing, and where gasoline costs less than a bottle of water. Now, picture this. Behind this dazzling facade of gold and wealth, there's another side, one that few dare to talk about. A country where kissing in public could land you in jail, where being your true self might lead to social exile, and where the very people who build this extravagance live in conditions that resemble an open-air prison. Welcome to Qatar, the land of contradictions. While billionaires and the elite enjoy an almost surreal bubble of privilege, where electricity, water, and even education bills simply don't exist, hundreds of thousands of foreign workers endure a brutal system that borders on modern slavery. You've heard of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, right? The global spectacle that put Qatar under the spotlight. But at what cost? Behind the breathtaking stadiums and the grand celebrations, thousands of migrant workers lost their lives in inhumane conditions just to make that event happen. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Think that's shocking? Just wait until you hear about the rules that dictate everyday life in this country. Forget about holding hands with your partner in public. Whether you're in a heterosexual or same-sex relationship, any public display of affection could get you into serious trouble. Homosexuality? Criminalized. Women's rights? Severely restricted. And if you think being a foreigner in Qatar is tough, try being a foreign woman. But here's the big question. How did such a tiny country, with fewer than 3 million people, amass so much wealth and power? And how does it balance this extravagant opulence with such controversial practices? Stick around, because we're about to dive deep into the geography, history, and hidden truths behind Qatar's Golden Curtain. Qatar may be just a tiny strip of land in the Persian Gulf, but don't let its size fool you. It holds some of the largest natural gas reserves on the planet and boasts one of the world's richest economies. Located on the Arabian Peninsula, it shares a land border with just one country, Saudi Arabia. The rest of its territory is surrounded by the sea, making it a historically strategic hub for both trade and regional geopolitics. Despite its compact size, just over 11,500 square kilometers, Qatar has an outsized influence on the global stage. Its climate? Pure desert, which means unbearably high temperatures in the summer, often soaring past 50 degrees Celsius. Rain? Almost non-existent. In fact, most of the country's water comes from desalination plants that turn seawater into something drinkable. And then there's the population, a fascinating contrast. Out of nearly 3 million residents, less than 15% are actually Qatari citizens. The rest? Migrant workers from countries like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and the Philippines, who keep the country running while native Qataris enjoy a level of luxury that most of the world can only dream of. And here's a key detail. While Qatari nationals receive free access to essentials like electricity, healthcare, and education, foreign workers face a starkly different reality. One we'll dive into shortly. But before we get into the scandals and the extreme inequality, we need to understand how this small nation went from being almost unknown to one of the richest and most powerful players on the planet. And for that, we need to go back in time to its very origins. Qatar's history is a perfect example of how a seemingly insignificant stretch of land can transform into an empire of unimaginable wealth. But to understand how that happened, we need to go back thousands of years, when the region was inhabited by nomadic Bedouin tribes who survived on fishing and pearl trading. That's right, before oil and natural gas, Qatar's greatest treasure lay beneath the sea, rare pearls that were exported to markets in India and Europe. For centuries, the region was ruled by various empires, including the Persians and the Ottomans. But it was in the 19th century that Qatar began to develop its own identity, mainly under the rule of the Al Thani family, who, to this day, govern the country with an iron grip. For much of the 20th century, Qatar was a British protectorate, meaning that while it had a local government, it was ultimately controlled and protected by the United Kingdom. But everything changed in 1971, when the country declared independence and started forging its own path. And that's when Qatar's fate took a dramatic turn. In the years that followed, oil and, more importantly, natural gas were discovered in massive quantities. Practically overnight, Qatar went from a pearl diving economy to one of the richest nations on the planet. But with great wealth came great ambition, an insatiable desire to stand out on the global stage. Qatar began investing heavily in infrastructure, sports, and media. To give you an idea, the famous news network Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatari government and is now one of the most influential players in global geopolitics. But all of this comes at a cost, because while the government flaunts power and luxury, a significant part of the population lives under extreme exploitation. Now that we understand how Qatar became this powerhouse, let's talk about what draws tourists from all over the world to this small yet mighty nation. If you think luxury and extravagance are reserved only for Qatari elites, just wait until you see the attractions that make Qatar such a sought-after and controversial destination. If there's one place where the concept of luxury reaches an entirely new level, it's Qatar. Ultra-modern skyscrapers, artificial islands, shopping malls that look more like royal palaces, and seven-star hotels make this country a true playground for millionaires. And of course, tourism here isn't for just anyone. Qatar wants to attract a global elite, offering experiences that range from extravagant to downright surreal. The capital, Doha, is the gateway to this world of opulence. One of its most breathtaking landmarks is the Pearl Qatar, a fully man-made island where luxury yachts are docked next to designer boutiques like Chanel, Gucci, and Rolex. Visitors often compare it to Dubai, but with a uniquely Qatari flair. And for those who prefer history and culture, the Museum of Islamic Art is a true architectural masterpiece, housing an impressive collection of artifacts that tell the story of centuries of Islamic heritage. And if you think luxury and the desert don't mix, you haven't seen Inland Sea, one of the few places on Earth where the sea meets the desert, creating a truly surreal landscape. The 4x4 dune-bashing tours here are a must for any visitor, but be warned, this adventure can get intense and should only be done with experienced drivers. But when it comes to tourism in Qatar, it's not all sunshine and roses. For travelers used to the freedoms of places like Europe or the Americas, the cultural differences can be quite a shock. The rules here are strict. Public displays of affection like kissing or hugging can be seen as offensive. Revealing or tight clothing might earn you disapproving stares. And alcohol is only available in certain hotels and private clubs. Even so, Qatar is trying to market itself as a modern and inclusive tourist destination. But does that modernity apply to everyone? Because while billionaires and celebrities are welcome with red carpet treatment, there's another group of people living a starkly different reality. Workers who came chasing a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a waking nightmare. And this is where the mask of perfection begins to slip. If there's one country that can truly say money is no object, it's Qatar, with some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and an economy built on exporting that wealth. Qatar boasts one of the highest per capita GDPs on the planet. Here, being a native citizen means never having to worry about electricity bills, water, healthcare, or education. The government covers it all. But this prosperity isn't for everyone. Qatar's economy is propped up by millions of foreign workers, mostly from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. They arrive seeking a better life, but many end up trapped in a brutal system of exploitation. Construction workers, for example, earn shockingly low wages, live in overcrowded accommodations, and in many cases, have their passports confiscated by employers, preventing them from leaving the country. This system, known as kafala, has been widely condemned by human rights organizations, yet it remains a harsh reality in Qatar. Meanwhile, the cost of living in Qatar is a wild roller coaster. While essential services are free for Qatari citizens, for foreigners, prices can be astronomical. Renting a modest apartment can easily cost between 5,000 and 10,000 Qatari riyals per month, $1,370 to $2,740, while a simple lunch at a mid-range restaurant can set you back around 30 to 50 riyals, $8 to $14. And what about salaries? A manual laborer, such as a construction worker, might earn around 1,000 to 1,500 riyals per month, $275 to $410, while a skilled professional like an engineer or foreign doctor can make upwards of 30,000 riyals, $8,200. The income gap between Qatari nationals, wealthy expatriates, and migrant laborers is simply staggering. But Qatar knows it can't rely on natural gas forever. The government has been heavily investing in economic diversification, betting on tourism, technology, and even the financial sector to keep the wealth flowing. But can a country truly modernize without addressing the deep inequalities that fuel its economy? Because while billionaires enjoy air-conditioned palaces, thousands of laborers endure grueling shifts under the scorching sun, often without basic rights. And it doesn't stop there. Beyond labor exploitation, Qatar has an even darker side, one that involves corruption, severe restrictions on personal freedoms, and a system designed to benefit a select few while keeping many in the shadows. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. On one hand, Qatar presents itself as a modern, luxurious, and progressive nation. But on the other, reality is far different from much of the population. Here, strict rules limit personal freedoms. And if you're not part of the elite, you might find yourself living in a system that feels like an open-air prison. Let's start with what shocks most Westerners. The restrictions. Public displays of affection? Forbidden. Whether you're a heterosexual or a same-sex couple, kissing or even hugging in public can lead to warnings or even arrest. Homosexuality, in fact, is a crime in Qatar. LGBTQ plus individuals live in complete secrecy, as the law allows for imprisonment and, in extreme cases, even harsher punishments. And what about women? While some progress has been made in recent years, gender inequality remains deeply rooted. In Qatar, women still need permission from a male guardian, whether the father, brother, or husband, to make major life decisions, such as traveling abroad or getting married. Even with degrees and professional qualifications, many still face significant barriers in the workforce and public life. But if there's one group that suffers the most, it's foreign workers. During construction of the stadiums for the 2022 World Cup, thousands of migrant laborers died in inhumane conditions, exhausting shifts under extreme heat, a lack of workplace safety, and wages that often took months to be paid. Many of these workers arrived in Qatar already in debt, having paid outrageous recruitment fees just to secure a job. Once there, their passports were often confiscated, leaving them trapped with no way to leave the country. And behind the scenes, corruption runs deep. Qatar was accused of bribing FIFA officials to secure the right to host the World Cup, the biggest football event on the planet. Despite numerous allegations, little has changed. Money talks, and Qatar's global influence allows it to avoid consequences in many of these scandals. But as dark as this reality is, signs of change are emerging. International pressure has forced Qatar to revisit some of its labor laws and provide better conditions for foreign workers. Small steps have also been taken toward improving women's rights. The road ahead is long, but one thing is certain. Qatar can no longer hide its contradictions. At the end of the day, this country remains a living paradox, a place where luxury and hardship exist side by side, where modernity clashes with rigid traditions, and where, despite all the controversy, the future may still hold some surprising changes. Qatar is, without a doubt, one of the most intriguing countries in the world, a place where wealth seems infinite. Yet at the same time, it hides harsh realities that few dare question. A country where modernity coexists with outdated laws, where billionaires live without a care while foreign workers endure brutal conditions. But can this bubble of luxury and inequality last forever? The truth is, Qatar is under the world's watchful eye, and the pressure for change has never been stronger. The 2022 World Cup exposed the dark side of its economy, and since then, small reforms have been introduced. The kafala system has started to weaken. Working conditions have improved in some areas, and little by little, the country is beginning to realize that it must adapt to a world that no longer tolerates such injustices. Of course, deep change doesn't happen overnight, especially in a society as traditional and tightly controlled by an absolute monarchy. But history has shown that no empire, no matter how wealthy, can ignore inevitable transformations. Qatar may continue trying to balance its identity between the past and the future, but one thing is certain. The world is watching, and the era of impunity may be coming to an end. The country of contradictions will have to decide, does it truly want to be a modern powerhouse, Or will it continue wearing that disguise? One way or another, Qatar will remain a fascinating mystery and a living example that not everything that glitters is gold.